things I'm seeing. A pair of glasses here, so I'm gonna hold on to those. Now I'm just gonna have to navigate all of what's connecting. For sure, around you, there's a lady who acknowledges that she feels like she died kind of too soon. The thing is that she feels like she at least got to reach middle age, or at least got to kind of reach around that time frame. And she's like, I got to this point. It's not like I died in my 20s, but I didn't die in my 80s. The feeling that comes through with this, technically, it was more of a feeling of like, when it comes to getting the news of my passing, I feel like not everyone at one point was kind of around or had the opportunity to say goodbye. So when we hear, it's almost like, oh my God, this is a surprise or a shock, because it's almost like I would want to be holding her hand in the moment that she passed.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
She's having me acknowledge a reference to a battle. She's having me talk about the last 6 months of her life, and then she's having me refer to spreading. She has me refer to 4 girls that I need to highlight, but
I can't even breathe.
Where would the 4 girls be total?
There's 4 of them.
Awesome, great. From her perspective, the feeling is like, I think I'm ready to go. I just am not ready to leave my family. And the feeling is, from her perspective, like,
this is crazy.
When I pass, I'm not gonna be worrying about myself because I'm worried about my girls. And she goes,
Oh my gosh, you're so sad, my girl.
yeah.
Oh my gosh.
She's saying, my girls, my girls, my girls. And she's like,
Oh my
I'm okay when I
gosh.
transition, but I'm worried about my girls. I wanna make sure my girls are gonna be fine. And she is having me acknowledge that there's a feeling of, at the time of her passing, the reason why I wanna emphasize this feeling of kind of suddenness is because I don't feel like everybody got to actually be there in that moment.
My sister didn't get to say goodbye. And so she just never got to say goodbye. Because she was away in college.
Right.
I'm sorry.
Oh, all good.
You said my girl.
Yeah, that's how she views them.
Yeah, so she just didn't get to say goodbye.
Right.
And she didn't have that moment. That's what she used to say.
That's what she saw about my girls.
And that's what Grandma said. She said that I can go, but I don't want to leave my girls.
She is acknowledging that a ring was lost that was hers. And this did happen, and she knows about it.
You're absolutely right.
And she's like, it's just an object, it's just a thing. But it was her ring.
Yeah, it was.
And she knew
and
about
it went missing from the house.
Yeah. She does actually connect hands with a child that's passed. She's connecting to a miscarriage.
Yes.
And so she knows about the miscarriage.
Yes, and that, she talked about it and it bothered her.
Yeah.
She really felt bad about that.
But she makes it a point to acknowledge that she is with that child. There's reference to the cancer susceptibility. We get the reference to an individual who would have the concern for cancer. So, has your mother dealt with any cancers or any cancers?
She passed from a brain tumor, brain cancer.
I'm so sorry.
I miss her tremendously. I mean, we were best friends, and she lived 2 years, you know, fighting cancer. But I did go through a really hard time where I just couldn't face it.
Sure.
I was so young, I didn't really know how to, you know, no one teaches you how to deal with this.
Right.
Which was, it was hard. It was hard to see her like that. It was hard to see this tough fight. I mean, she's a warrior. And then to see her in a vulnerable position, that just, I remember I just started working for MTV, and it was a big break in my career. And I flew my mom out, and I didn't realize that she was having really bad headaches and she was feeling really sick. And I was so young at the time that I kind of took it personal. And I remember bringing her to set, and I wanted her to be happy and, you know, say so much, but she just wanted to go back and get in the bed. And I was so busy in my own head with work and like a lot of distractions. Absolutely. And I hope she knows that I was not being insensitive. I just didn't realize.
Yeah.
It takes a very strong person to be around anyone that's going through an illness. And then they're the rare, beautiful people. My brother. My brother gave up everything to be by her side. And he's so strong to do that. I didn't do that. And there's a part of me that feels really guilty because I felt like I should have been there more.
Do you know of a Jane or a Janice?
Oh my God, yeah.
Okay, cool. They're having me acknowledge her, just bring up her health. Just keep this in mind.
Mom's sister was Janice.
Okay.
Okay, Janice passed away. Of cirrhosis.
Gotcha.
But yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, they keep going to mom's side of family in the way this is coming through, so I'm just gonna go with it. They're having me highlight sister, sister, sister. I feel like they're putting this around you, though. Do you have a sister?
I do.
Okay, perfect.
It's like he's opening and closing his eyes, but he's not. Or falling asleep and waking up, but he's not. There gotta be something coming out.
So this female coming through, I can tell would have passed away at a premature age. She's having me talk about sister, brother in this equation. It would be you and your sister. They're having me talk about this female's last moments or this female's last interactions with these people. And it's interesting because she's not putting concern around you, but she is putting concern around sister. And I can tell that it kind of has to do with this feeling of if people are gonna be able to cope with my death after I die. There's this feeling for some reason of being concerned about sister. She's just acknowledging this feeling of I know my son's gonna be all right. I get him. It's my daughter I'm kind of establishing more concern over as far as her ability to be independent, her ability to be able to kind of move on without this mother figure. When I passed, I wasn't worried about him. I was more concerned about her.
Right.
Does some of what I'm saying make sense?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, cool.
It's actually yeah, you got me.
No worries.
My sister was such the straight A student, never in trouble. And I did everything wrong. And then now, my sister never made a great deal of money. She has a child with special needs, and it's tenuous. And so it makes sense that there should be a concern there. Yeah. Her concern was not for my safety or my well-being. Her concern was for my sister.
The way I would describe this, it just keeps coming through, and it's Mom is having me acknowledge, okay, she's showing me a circle that always references to
time.
Yes, and also sometimes addiction, sometimes cycles, things along those lines. And for some reason, she's bringing up sobriety, and it feels great, feels positive, but they're kind of correlating two events, and I'm trying to figure out what this is.
What's going on there? It's not a wave complex I'm used to seeing.
There's a reference to a decline here in the way this is coming in. Your mom is showing me a line, and it's going like this. And when they do that, it's always a way of referencing to I'm doing okay, and then something happens, and then I just kind of, my quality of life declines. And that's kind of the way I would describe it. There's just a reference with this that she's having me bring up. The thing is that this seemed untimely. This feels like a situation where it's I shouldn't have gone when I went. And then they're having me bring up, let me see here. She's, to figure out what she's showing me. She's showing me a car, she's showing me a phone call. She's bringing me, it's not her moment of passing, she's bringing me to this thing before, and I don't know why. This is an event Mom's having me highlight. There's a feeling of someone was waiting for me to call them, someone was waiting for me to reach out to them, and then they don't get a call from me, they get a call about me. And there's just something about this, the way this is coming in. I think Mom's showing me symbolically, she's referencing to being alone, and then she's showing me pressing a button, which is always symbolic for trying to get help, trying to get help, and then someone not responding. There's just kind of this feeling of hey, what's up? I need someone, what's wrong? And then there's not someone there to receive me. It's kind of the way I would describe it, to
This is the biggest, it's the biggest problem that I have, I think is what you're describing there. I mean, everybody in the family suffered from alcoholism.
Gotcha.
So the sobriety thing makes sense.
I see.
I've been sober for 10 years now. I'm the only one in the family that got sober.
Wow.
Mom struggled with it. She was on and off of the wagon. The point of decline was 5 years before Mom died.
I see.
On October 10th of 1998, Mom suffered an aneurysm. The response time, I know that just failed to call for an ambulance.
Gotcha.
So that would be the aneurysm was going to do what it was going to do no matter if the ambulance came quickly, but this ass waited for a long time before he called.
I see.
She, when she came out of the hospital, went into the home of this ass who she was reconciling with. The being alone, and this is the biggest problem that I have, it's not the aneurysm, she was physically and mentally disabled for the last 5 years of her life. That was the point of decline. I see. The crucial problem is that she was left alone, right? And she developed bed sores. And the bed sores are the worst thing that can happen to anybody, period. Because here, Mom spent the last 5 years of her life crying in pain, my bottom. She had these huge, like with all the nerves and that pain that she was in I still can't, I can't really handle that very well. You know, I have a lot of personal trauma over the pain and suffering that my mom went through.
I'm curious to know if you have any questions.
Well, I'm still mad at her for leaving. We had just a lot of stuff going on in our lives back then. And I feel like my mom left us and didn't fight. I know that sounds terrible to say, but I think about her every day, and I always say, I don't know why you left, because she was so young. I just felt like my mom gave up. You know, she died really, really quickly, and, you know, it really killed me. I mean, she was 57 years old, and she got cancer, and she died, and that's kind of how I feel, and I think that's why I'm mad at her.
Of course, we're hurt by it. You know, it's never easy to lose a loved one, and when we need the most, you know, it's extra devastating. The way this came through, honestly, was they were referencing to a multifaceted situation that tends to reference that someone runs the risk of not dealing with just like one issue, but multiple. If we have someone who has one type of cancer, it runs the risk of spreading to multiple parts of the body.
Yes, she had cancer. She had breast and lung cancer.
I'm sorry. And for some reason, there was this feeling of like, it's better to let go now than have to hold on and go through all of this later on. They sometimes are going to be more inclined to say, okay, I don't want to fight. I don't want to have to hold on for something that I know I'm not going to be able to beat in the long run. So
she didn't have to feel as much pain.
Right, and there seems to be a knowing this on some level, but of course, it's never an easy time to go.
That makes me feel better. I think about her all the time, and I'm going to smile more from now when I think of her instead of feeling so bad that she left too early. I wanted closure today, and I got it. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
I'm so glad.
Losing a mother is probably the worst thing I've ever experienced in my whole life. I mean, it's like losing your best friend. When my mom passed, I was there. I was holding her hand, and it was just hard because I just didn't think it was her time to go yet. She was too young. She was only 57. But I won't hold that, why did you leave us so early? Now I know that there was no way she could fight this disease.
Your mom gives me this feeling of almost like I don't have enough time to really think about what I'm about to face. And that's what makes this so hard. Sorry. I want you to know that when she comes through, the connection that she has to you on the other side is so close, and no matter what time wasn't able to be spent in the physical world, she comes through so connected to you and in such a young, you know, lively, kind of beautiful, beautiful, beautiful way. And that's how she wanted to be remembered. But I want you to know that she's resolved with her passing.
Yeah, she shouldn't have died. Died too early. Infection after a procedure. We're not happy the way the procedure went. And then she had a complication. Then he eventually succumbed to an infection in the hospital after 30 days. Wasn't ready to die. Zero. Didn't expect this to happen. She was afraid to have the surgery. Didn't expect this. She got rolled in the operating room. It was like, oh, it'll be no big deal. She'll be fine. And a complication happened in surgery. And then they came out and said, yeah, your mom may not make it. She's bleeding a lot. She's probably gonna die. Just like that. We almost passed out right there. What? And then the next 31 days was an emotional roller coaster, and she died. What still haunts us to this day And I'm blaming myself sometimes, thinking, well, if I was there, if I would have spoke to the doctor and would have said this, would she still be living today? And then at the end, knowing that this was in the hospital and this is her blood, that's... So it's intense. You know, I miss my mom.
The feeling that comes through is that there is an acknowledgement basically from Mom of every time we go on stage, every time we perform, every time we are all glammed up. The feeling that comes through is that there would have been this thing that would have been done kind of repeatedly, but it's like a little nod to Mom.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes, yes, yeah. I do it, this is what I do, is that, you know, when I performed for her when I was a kid, I could do anything in the living room. I could do anything. It was always great. No matter how terrible I was, it was always great. Right. So what I do is whenever I go on stage, I remember that I think, this is Mama's living room. I'm gonna go on stage. Whatever you do is fine. And so that calms my nerves.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, something through really quick. Sorry. I'm seeing Diana Ross randomly. This is so weird. So there's a Diana Ross connection to your mom.
Well, the connection is that I was obsessed with Diana Ross and the Supremes, and I was so obsessed that I would perform the song with a broom for my mother in the living room. And years later, you know, she and I became friends.
Right. I love these earrings, so I assume these were your mom's?
These were hers, yep, yep. I was probably wearing those earrings when I did the impersonation.
She comes through and she acknowledges that you miss that.
I do.
Because it's like, I miss being able to just go to Mom and just be her son, you know? She's acknowledging that, obviously, since her passing, she's seen your achievements. When she passed, she knew you were a star. And I want you to know that. But she's saying, you're my special, like, you're my baby boy.
I know that.
And the feeling is like, that's always going to be the case.
She'd gone to see a psychic before I was born.
Right.
And the psychic said, it's a boy, and he's gonna be famous.
Wow.
So everything you're saying is right on.
They're having me talk about your dad. Your dad is still alive, correct? Perfect.
He lives with me now.
Good. And that's a good thing. The way this comes in, she's putting a lot of emphasis on the release of guilt around your father, like really heavily. Like, let go of guilt, let go of guilt, let go of guilt. Just really, really, really
No,
monitor
there's
that.
something is sad about how she passed. He does feel guilt because he never got to say goodbye to her because he was sick, he got pneumonia. And he went to the hospital, and then she got pneumonia the next day. So then they brought her to a different hospital. So they never got to see each other.
Gotcha.
My dad got sick. I got a phone call. Then they said, your father can't breathe. He's having trouble breathing. So the ambulance is going to take him to the hospital. So I stayed with my mother. My brother went with my dad. Then the next day, my mom started not feeling well. But I think she knew she was going to leave. And she didn't want my dad to see her. It was like one of the hardest. It was a very hard day. I didn't want him to know she was in the hospital.
Sure.
Because I didn't want him to get upset.
Yeah.
I figured when they got better, they were gonna see each other, you know?
Right.
So my dad never got to say goodbye to her. And then it's like I had to tell my father. It was so hard. Me and my brother, it was like really hard. And it's like when my father saw me and my brother walk in to his hospital room together, he knew right away. Like me and my brother were a mess.
It's not a place you should ever have to be in. And,
Yes.
yeah, and the way this comes in, she wants Dad to let go of any guilt. And that's one of the biggest messages. And the way this comes in is like, wants him to let go of guilt. So I hope that he is able to let that go.